Scout is a pretty good dog.
So good.
Guys, I have some really big personal news. It's not just that I do have Scout the dog co-hosting the show from the chair in the background here, which you can just watch her and see when she gives up on the show. Usually I last a good, 20, 25 minutes before I give up all hope of this show being about football again, but we'll see what Scout believes. But fellas, you know what I did for the first time a couple days ago? You know what I purchased and used? I'm going to give you a hint. I got all 10 fingers still, and I'm proud of that fact.
I'm going with hedge clippers or chainsaw.
Nate, you want to get an official guess?
Weed whacker.
You're looking at the proud owner and operator of a chainsaw.
Oh, God.
Fellas,
Whoa.
I took down some little trees. I cut up some pieces of bigger trees. I'm going to pay somebody to help me get rid of all of the tree that's in the backyard at the moment, including tree I did not cut down that has been there for many, many years. Is this what you guys were warning me about when you were telling me 30's around the corner? I'm 29, and at this point, I feel like I could use at least a decade of my 30's.
Hey, I enjoy the enthusiasm. Let's not go fever dream with the chainsaw. Okay, let's.
Do you got a nice pair of the chaps there to keep your legs safe?
Yeah, but let me tell you what, Seth. My chaps only protect the front of my legs.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome into Only Weird Games here on KC Sports Network. Scout has turned away from the camera while the intro played like she couldn't bear the thought. Joshua Brisco, Seth Keysor, and Nate Taylor with you here to talk about, hey, they did it. They signed Mike Danna.
I told you guys. I told you.
We didn't need to do the wife swap after all. It was just remembering that spark, Nate. That love was still there.
Yeah, we just waited for some cap space and a little bit of leverage. And I don't care how many videos Charles Omenihu puts out. He's not going to be ready week 1. I will be. And you sure you're going to draft a guy in the first round for the 3rd straight year? Yeah. And look, Mike Danna loves working for the Chiefs. The Chiefs like Mike Danna, love Mike Danna as an employee. So, this was bound to happen. If someone asked me, hey, are they going to do this before Donovan Smith? I would have said, yes, that is still the case. Here we are, kids. It's interesting that it's a 3-year deal. Kind of as like a 1.5 year deal. I know we're gonna get into it, but there's a chance that maybe Mike Danna is not on the roster in 2025, but it's probably more likely that he is. And so, hey, if you didn't like free agency the first time around, or you were so determined to be on the Chiefs, you've sort of accomplished both. And I know there was some pushback, minor, but there was some pushback about, hey, maybe, is it really true that like other teams were pursuing him? I mean, yes, guys, yes, he was a free agent. There's other teams still have cap space and money to use. Okay, but ultimately it's his prerogative, it's his choice. He has agency as to where he wants to continue his career, and he. I think informed the Chiefs throughout the process that, yeah, he wanted to make it work. As I wrote in The Athletic, similar to Chris Jones, his top priority was staying with the Chiefs. So 3-year deal, everyone's happy, and Chiefs fans should be appreciative that they have 2 starting defensive ends for the 2024 season, and they're not forced to have to play Felix if it came to that, like they were forced to last year. Because of the whole Chris Jones saga.
We got a comment, or we have a couple kind of along these ways, but Troy is asking, like, is that bad news for Felix, or is it good news about Danna, or is it a little bit of both and a little bit of everything? Seth, we've been talking about this move being like an obvious one the Chiefs needed to make for a while. Why do you see the Chiefs sign Mike Danna to? Let me get you the terms actually, also while you finish scouting whatever, finish drawing up whatever play you're charting there, Seth. 3 years, $24 million with $13 million guaranteed. I haven't seen the rest of the structure of that. I don't know exactly how the cash flow is going to go, but that's essentially, like you said, Nate, that's a year and a half guaranteed. So I guess if he gets hurt or has a terrible year in 24, which none of us would expect, then there'd be a path to get out of it after 1 year. But this to me feels like you are locking in a versatile inside-outside worthy piece on a starting defensive line or on an NFL rotation. And that's valuable. It's a decent chunk of money, and it's great money for Mike Danna. But Seth, why was that why was that a move that we've been talking about, I think maybe literally every episode for the last several weeks?
Well, a big part of it is exactly what you alluded to there is, and Nate talked about it. I understand Charles Omenihu. I am now going to officially be joining the group of people that he is really mad at based on the Twitter content he's put out. And hey, you know what? Hey, Charles Omenihu I think he started a YouTube channel to kind of chronicle his comeback from injury. Is it a YouTube channel?
Delete think from that sentence. He started.
He did start a YouTube channel.
Yes, he did.
And so go follow that. Check out his progress. I'm rooting for him. I hope he does incredible things. There are very few players who got ACL tears at the point in the season he did and then come back the next year by training camp. He has shared rather vocally on social media that people doubt him at their own peril. I am not sure what I am in peril of. I'm concerned about what the peril is because I'm just sharing an opinion.
Right now it's allergy season for me. But yeah, go ahead.
Not even an opinion, Seth. You're not sharing an opinion. You're saying no one's done that recovery timeline before.
Yeah, if you doubt Charles, your allergies may get worse. I can't confirm that.
No.
But no. That's you two are in real trouble. Like mine's pretty bad, but really. Best case scenario, I think, for Omenihu is he comes back midway through the season and is good still. And I think he'll be a good player once he recovers fully. It's just tough. I mean, with a torn ACL, you got to trust it. Juan Thornhill came back, and the first year he was back, he wasn't himself. He didn't have that top gear, and that was tough for him. And then he kind of found it again.
Charles Omenihu was telling you, Seth, that he is, as Ice Pyro says, built different.
Yes. I, too, like to think that I am built different until things happen. Like when I had appendicitis, for example, I tend to, as much as I don't act like I would be this kind of person, I am, when I'm in physical pain, I tend to just kind of like if I ignore it, it'll go away. And that's worked for me in various situations. However, when I had appendicitis, it turns out that I am not actually #built different from other humans in important ways. Another example of this is when I had strep throat once and I just didn't go on antibiotics for a little while. Turns out my immune system is not #built different, and I didn't come as close to dying as Josh did with the whole diabetes thing, but I was having a hard time moving. Apparently strep throat just keeps getting worse. Until you either go on antibiotics or die. So
it's shocking how many illnesses are like that. And it really explains the previous, let's just call it 4,000 years of human civilization. You're like, man, it seems like they just died from nonsense all the time.
Yeah, a toothache. Well, what happened to him? Oh, he's dead.
He had that toothache for 3 years, and then eventually it all exploded.
So even assuming he comes back midway through the year, you want your rotation that you are sure is going to play to be Karlaftis, Omenihu, Danna. That's who you want your for sure. And if FAU can come in, provide you 500 solid snaps, he takes a big step forward, yay. But there's a big difference between hoping and wishing. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite judges is, that's not a plan, that's a wish. And it's always so mean. But it is accurate. No, because it's said to people in really tough moments. But because it is what's going to be different this time? This is the 17th time we've seen you on a probation violation. What's going to be different now? I'm going to try really hard. Okay. It just you need to have an actual plan. And FAU developing in his second year, it's a hope, it's a dream. Joe Cullen's great. FAU was a really young rookie, showed some flashes. Hopefully Joe Cullen was able to teach him about jumping like at the snap. Like you can go when they snap the ball, Felix. And I'm sorry, I know this is dragging us far afield, but you can go right when the ball is snapped. You do not have to wait a half second. You're not Jawan Taylor. No one is watching you. This is not.
It's called anticipation.
And that's he has the slowest get off. And the fact that he was so successful in college, because it was on film in college too. People talk about this all the time. The ball would snap. Like the 300-pound defensive tackle would be a yard into the backfield, and he's like, and starts going, and he would still win because he's got heavy hands, he's got some good traits. So counting on that to be better is very different from saying, hey, if he's better, man, now we're cooking with gas. Well, exactly, you're dealing with a guy who's you don't want someone to have a 2-second head start to just wait for you and set up.
You did say hike, right? You did.
You did.
I don't know if you guys saw. I think it was Nate Tice. He tweeted out a clip of, I think it was Wisconsin, and the entire offensive line and the entire defensive line is either engaged in their block or set for something, except for I think the left guard, whose hand is still touching the ground.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, and it's like, it's not like you didn't know the snap count, because everything's happening now. Like something has gone wrong in this process, and that's not a way to make your life easier in the NFL trenches.
Absolutely. The fact that he was as successful as he was in college is a testament to his other traits, which is what they drafted him for. Angry drunken German is angry, drunken, and probably German about the fact that we in the comment section here, by the way, I'm not just saying things about angry drunken Germans.
That's not just a character of yours.
Yeah, it's not just a character that I pull out, but he asked, we couldn't tell us this before the draft. I did. I wrote about it. And they drafted, I was like, that dude is slow off the line. However, there's the opportunity for development, and he has the traits. He was one of the youngest draft picks. So you see, but the problem is, without Mike Danna, he's your starting defensive end.
That's
right.
And
your starting defensive end is, hey, we hope he'll be average. That's dangerous. Whereas with Mike Danna, you're good. You're great. You're not like great. He's not like Brian Burns. Like they didn't trade for Nick Bosa, but you are set. You know what the level is, and you know you're not going to take a gigantic step backwards at the line, knowing that you're losing L'Jarius Sneed, and probably the coverage you're going to see a bit of a drop off there. By bringing back Danna, now you've lost Sneed and you've lost Willie Gay Jr., and the rest of it, the defense overall is intact. And that's a big deal.
Right. And let's be mindful, too, that the Chiefs have a longer runway with Felix than most teams do at a premium position, given their place, not only in the draft of last year, but just in the context of, their sustained success. So you could really, in some ways, afford more than like the average team for Felix to get good in year 4, because you still theoretically have the 5th-year option.
Mm-hmm.
And you have George Karlaftis, who's a year earlier than him, who is good, who is also a first-round pick as well, that you would, as of right now, consider for a second contract. So they have a longer runway to develop Felix than the average NFL team who drafted a defensive end in the first round. And I think people have to understand that too. And that's why it's so important for Andy Reid to retain Steve Spagnuolo and Joe Cullen, and for Clark Hunt to open the pocketbooks for things we cannot see from a salary cap standpoint, which is the coaching staff. So I
can think of a few other things I thought you might say there, but that's a good point about the coaching staff.
Yeah, we don't know how much the assistants really make. Obviously, it's been reported. You can go check it out on The Athletic as well. Like, we're trying our best to get an assessment below the coordinators, but it's really hard for like Joe Cullen. Like, what does he make? I don't really know, kids. It's better than last year. That's what I do know. So they knew Felix was, say, better than Tano Passanio in his first year, but that it was going to be a similar, you could argue, development process with him, because when they drafted Felix in the second round, it was like, great athlete who we need to turn into a defensive end. Now it's a defensive end who is a very good athlete who we need to refine over a longer stretch of period, knowing he's going to get mentorship from George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, and obviously Mike Danna.
Just a quick note here. I see a really good question here from I never say this correctly.
Have they made one yet, Blake? I don't know. Get a manufacturer and my address.
Sorry, Seth, your eyes left the playing field, and Tucker threw it to us collectively, where Blake said, is there an FAU bobblehead on Nate's shelf that he could knock off every once in a while in maybe early September?
Yeah.
Because MJ Melendez has been en fuego since the box fell. So that's huge.
No, well done, Nate. Whatever it is you did to that guy, it is spooky.
Yeah.
Nate's
Now I
waving
can't
an
wait.
MJ Melendez bobblehead.
I cannot wait for him to hit 6 home runs in the next 4 games now. I had someone comment, pass Lou, pass low, pass.
Yeah,
I'm not
he's
sure.
there every episode. Every single episode.
And you're
out
awesome,
to
by
him.
the way. Thank you.
Okay.
He pointed out Dana, Karlaftis, Jones. By the way, I do shift back and forth between Dana and Dana, so that's fine.
I was going to circle back on that one. I'm putting a pin in that.
Yep. So let's say
Not just at
Dana,
your expense.
Karlaftis, and Jones was good enough for the Super Bowl. Yes. Yes, you're not wrong, but I would say this. In the Super Bowl, Snead and McDuffie dominated, as did some support type guys, and I've written about this in like the run defense aspect of things. And San Francisco is a very specific team in that you are trying to win a little more often with some pure man looks and blitzes, because Kyle Shanahan doesn't allow for as many checks and slides, and he doesn't give his quarterback as much protection at the line. So you're not just relying on 4 guys to win up front. Where you were more so was the previous 3 weeks, and that's where Charles Omenihu mattered a lot. And so now Karlaftis might take yet another step forward. He's already maxed out a little beyond what I thought he'd be. That's great. And he seems like he'll continue to take steps forward. But even with those 3, with Dana, Karlaftis, and Jones, you need Jones as a super duper star to make that group a good group. But you take out Dana, and now you're wondering. So that's the main reason with Mike Danna coming back. It allows them to not be desperate. Because I don't like desperate. It's a guy they trust. It's a guy that you know can give you good run defense reps and can be part of the complementary pass rush. It really had to happen, honestly. Otherwise, they were risking taking a really big step back in the pass rush at the same time that you've got Snead leaving. And I do think they're built better to handle that than most other areas, but they had to get someone there. I think Dana is the most obvious choice. I personally would be more comfortable if they signed one more guy, but we'll see how they feel about Charles Omenihu. Maybe they're subscribers to his YouTube channel and they, they don't want to be imperiled by doubting him.
Seth is called training camp.
That's when you get your mercenary sign.
Yep,
right?
it's called training camp. Hey,
well, you mean after training camp? Like,
Yeah.
Or
that's
like
like
the
a
first-
late August. Like
the first couple practices. Yeah, what's his name?
Yeah.
Give him a call.
Calais Campbell's still playing?
Yeah.
Give him a call, and then he'll say on the phone, do I have to come in August? Because I've heard St. Joe's hot. They'd be like,
We're gonna acclimate, baby.
yeah,
Acclimate.
maybe
Ramp it up.
mid-August,
Ramp it up.
late August.
Just-
That's a veteran move, though. Like, yeah,
Come meet the guys. Come meet the coaching staff. Look at all these fans.
Carlos Dunlap, October 29th. Thank you, Sheamus. That's
October
Carlos
29th.
Dunlap. Yeah, that was late August.
Yeah.
Right.
You need a vet who can get some of those, who can get a few of those potentially missing Omenihu snaps. And the Chiefs could sign Javon Curse at the 2 days before the end of training camp, and I wouldn't be completely surprised. Like, I feel like there's probably a few snaps left in Javon Curse? How old is Javon Curse right now? Let's find out.
44.
47.
That was a nice guess.
You think you could block Javon Curse? Hell no.
That's very accurate. But no, so Dana had to be re-signed. The 3-year deal. On a side note, we've talked about the football side of it for the Chiefs. I think it gives their defense a chance to be about as good as it was last year, which is a big deal. It's really hard to have a great defense 2 years in a row because it's hard to keep the whole band together. They've lost 2 important players in Snead and Gay, but both are guys who they think they've got the guys in the wings to mostly subsume their role. So that's great. If you can replace 90% of what those 2 guys did, you'll still be really good. To great, even. So, yay. But without Dana or without someone, anybody to fill that role, they would have been in trouble. But also, shout out to Mike Danna. 4th round pick, has made, a couple million through the first 4 years of his career, give or take. He managed to do so without being involved in some kind of cataclysmic event that would cost him hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Sorry, I'm irritated with young men making poor choices. Mike Danna made good choices.
Sorry.
You're not that young anymore, man.
I wore goggles that's fair. I wore goggles when I operated my chainsaw. Okay, I tried to make some good choices.
Well, yeah, they only cover my legs chaps.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, there are, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like chainsaw chaps. I
saw an Instagram reel video of one of those not work that well, and I thought, I'll figure it out. And so far, I got all my fingers. And I think the first day I did really good, like chainsaw safety, and then day 2 I definitely was squinting and just swinging around one-handed, trying to get the branch up above my head.
Yeah, attaching it to a rope and swinging it around your head. Good, Josh. That's what I'd like to hear.
Oh, I had Renee pulling the branch down, so she was wrapped around the branch. So at that point when it hits, woof.
Yeah.
3.5 million career earnings for Mike Danna. I mean, that signing bonus probably cleared that.
13 million guaranteed. That's the dream. You made it to the life-altering money. And I apologize. I know for a lot of people, $1 million is life-altering money. For me, it would be. But it's not like generational life-altering money, which is what these guys dream of when they get into the league.
How about this also, in addition to that, you're also the poorest dude at your workplace at an average salary of $900,000 for Mike Danna. He is the most broke dude on the Chiefs defense until now. And now he's buying stuff for the rookies. You know what I mean? There's this is a big deal. And just as a bookkeeping notice from our side, and Nate, I don't know if you had any other anything else before we kind of shift on to some other things on the pursuit from the other teams that you mentioned earlier and all of that. But none of us are batting an eye functionally at 3 for 24. That's really 2 for what if we call it 2 for 16?
Yeah, 16, 17. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to sign up for that. And then you basically get an opt-in year for $8 million in the final year too. If it's more or less the same amount of money throughout the life of the deal, $8 million per is cool with me. I'm okay with that.
Right. And so from the player standpoint, he probably has a little safer security in his 3-year deal than, say, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who it was structured in a way that it kind of told everyone you're gonna have to be really good in year 2 to get to year 3, and even that would be restructured of some kind or an extension of some kind. Whereas and I just want to remind people, it only cost the Chiefs $2 million in dead cap to release Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They created $12 million in salary cap space. So in terms of percentage, in terms of portion, when you're looking at whatever the cap's going to be in 2026, 2027, it's a little bit better for the player in that regard. So yeah, and you could say defensive end and receiver are comparable from a positional value standpoint. Yeah, I don't know. As I said before, I thought Detroit was interesting for Mike Danna because obviously he would be closer to home, kind of similar to L'Jarius Sneed going back to Tennessee. Obviously, which is where he played in college. Mike Danna played at Central Michigan and then Michigan. So there was some tie-in. Obviously, Detroit needs pass rush help. They still need pass rush help. So as much as Chiefs fans I understand are like, maybe we need more and more, the Detroit Lions are saying the same thing. And
Most
so-
NFL teams would like
Or-
one
yeah.
more rotational edge rusher. I mean,
Yes, yeah. One guy who we know, and again, the benefit for the Chiefs is, hey, we've drafted you, we've developed you, we've groomed you. You fit our weird defense. It's weird to some degree, but you fit our weird defense, and you can be versatile enough to play inside, outside, legitimately, to where it makes sense for us. And why do you want to try something else if you know you've helped us succeed and obviously win Super Bowls? And we're giving you a as you said, Josh, a very significant raise from obviously what you were throughout much of the course of your rookie deal. So it made sense, and this is the result of the luxurious D trade. You can't keep everybody, but opening up $19 million in cap space gets you Carson Wentz, it gets you Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it gets you Mike Danna. In the aggregate, it gets you more people capable of playing football than one guy who is restricted to a 1-year, $19.8 million deal.
Okay, now the most important thing. Nate, do some reporting for me, please. Blake Hill made this point earlier. The only downside about re-signing Michael is that I still can't remember how to pronounce his last name. I pronounce it differently every time I say it. Then Blake later notes that Seth said it differently twice in the same answer.
Uh-huh.
I think when he came into the league, we were all saying Danna.
Uh-huh.
And then at some point, I believe that it was we were informed that it's Danna. And now I feel like it's back to Danna again. And it's not a hard name to pronounce. I'm cool with whatever. He's been here for a long time, and I'm still not that confident. How do you pronounce number 51 on the Chiefs' name, Nate?
Let's see how fast I can do this.
If you're going to the media guide, I don't know that that's going to be good enough. Seth,
It's going to be just fine.
Seth, how do you generally say it when you're trying to get it right?
When I'm trying to get it right, I say Dana, which tells me that it's probably Danna.
I think that's
I have
the
completely lost the plot.
It's
changed.
it's the thing that happens to you. It's like when you're trying to spell the word rhythm, and you remember last time you did it wrong, and I did it wrong because I put the Y right after the R. So this time I make sure. No, wait. This is the last time did I want to remember last time that I need to put the Y in front of the R, and then you're done.
I believe
it's over at that
I believe it's Danna. Yes.
So Danimal's right there. We can go Danimal forever.
Dan is the pronunciation per the Kansas City Chiefs, per my reporting and quick Googling and research-based wizardry. So Dan is the pronunciation. Let's say it again, kids. Dan.
Let's all take turns. Nate, say it.
Mike Danna.
Mike. Wait, hold on. How did you... Mike
I know, I put some
Danna.
flair on it. Mike Danna.
You can't put flair on it the first time.
I gotta put flair on it.
Mike Danna.
Yes. Dan. Danna. Not Danna.
Seth, you just want to do it today?
Let's take a break.
Oh, come on.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
People think it's easy to keep a bit fresh over the Oh, hi, Scout. It was a good dog.
Hi.
People think it's easy to
This is
keep.
Hop up here. Scout's back here. Go ahead.
Yeah, Hoppa.
We're double dog.
Hey, Hop. Sorry, Hop. That's a really good dog. People think it's easy to keep a bit fresh, and they're right. And I'm not saying we've kept this bit fresh, but that was some nice audibling because you saw me see it, and it's like, Nate, how do you do it, Seth? And I was just like, oh, man, do I pretend that I don't know what's coming? So nice job letting it throw to me. And hey, you know what? Shout out to producer extraordinaire, Tucker D. Franklin. The D stands for light on his feet. And he understands this is the time. And he just, boom, right there.
Tucker D. Franklin, and the D stands for dog. I got a dog in my lap. I got a dog in the chair behind me. And Seth, you took a look at a dog coming into this 2024 NFL draft. Let's talk about Keon Coleman. I think his play style absolutely earns dog categorization. I don't know that it earns Chiefs wide receiver categorization though. What did you see? And did you have any priors going in? I know you like explicitly don't watch college football throughout the year, but he is a guy that has sort of like there's a little bit of baggage to his evaluation, I think. And I don't know if you were carrying that in there with you or not.
The first thing that you hear about Keon Coleman, and I try to avoid some of the stuff, but he had such a bad combine that I couldn't really avoid it. Like it's one of those bad news things that you really can't get away from. It's how I imagine, like, on excuse me, the allergies. You know how on like A Quiet Place, like if someone had tried to on day one avoid the bad news that aliens were killing everyone, it was probably hard to avoid that news, like because the aliens were trying to kill you. So similarly, in a flawless analogy, with Keon Coleman's. His combine was so bad. Him and Troy Franklin. I know both of them had terrible combines compared to what people expected from him. And Keon Coleman's was that he ran the 40 time. I think it was approximately the same time Dontari Poe had back in the day. And so everyone knows that. And then you watch him, like as soon as you turn on the screen, you really don't have to be like, well, which one is he? You're like, is it the giant guy that just like, man, that corner tried to press him and I think he just ripped off his arm and ate it. Like, and so and Coleman did, and I'm so glad this pulls into something I'm about to say. So one of our commenters, Greg Slatton, speaking of names I can't pronounce, which is literally all of them, didn't Coleman crush the gauntlet? He did. And what was interesting, when he was actually running, preparing to catch a football, he didn't lose any speed. And as Nate would say, kids, this is the difference between football speed and track speed. Keon Coleman is a former basketball player who plays like he is a basketball player, a really physical one, playing football. And by that, I mean he's unusually coordinated when doing things that require the ball in your hands. Basketball is the great equalizer in terms of athletes, right? Because anyone who's played basketball hated playing basketball with really athletic wrestlers, football players, basically anyone who's not a basketball player, because lots of elbows, lots of whatever, but it's the great equalizer. It's like, oh man, that guy's so fast. Yeah, can he do that while dribbling? Oh, and that's the thing, trying to catch a football, track it in the air, extend your hands, all these things. It's hard to sprint while doing that. So he did really well with that stuff. Now, he's faster on film than his 40 time. I like that about him. He's still not fast. Like he doesn't separate. So like you talk about like what you're expecting from an Andy Reid receiver. He's not a guy. He does separate on in routes a little bit. He can run a nice dig. And it's like, oh, hey, nice dig, buddy. And for a guy who doesn't have a blazing 40 time, he actually can stack corners a little bit. And then once his body's, and by stack, of course, I mean, instead of them being in front of him, he goes, whoop, and then he's in front of them running down the field. And once he's in front of them, those guys, they're way faster than him, but he's like in their way. And it's like, if you're on the highway and it's logging season, and so there's this logging truck in front of you taking up a lane and a half, and you're like, come on, man, and then someone threw a ball to the logging truck, you wouldn't be able to defend the ball from that logging truck because it's boxed you out with the logging trailer. Okay, I lost the analogy there. That's on me.
It's a very Minnesotan analogy the whole way through, too.
Are logging trucks not universal? Experience. Oh.
Do they do this?
No, they just assume you see them or you die. So, but no, so that's good to know. That that's not a universal experience. Sorry about that. I wonder what else. It's as though you're ice fishing. It's as though it's October and you're out there ice fishing. And you get out there with the cows and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. And then you realize, I feel so silly. I forgot my auger. Okay, none of this has anything to do with anything. I'm sorry.
I like that character. But I like that guy.
With Coleman, he has a skill set that certain types of offenses I think could find valuable. I really do. It just would be unusual for Andy Reid to go after him. He's mostly a contested ball guy, which, holy crap. Like if someone was to say, hey, I'm going to throw a football at another human while 100 monkeys attack him, and your life depends on whether, I don't know what's wrong with me today, the caffeine's hitting, but like seriously, 100 monkeys are going to attack a human. You're going to throw a ball at them. He needs to catch it. Who in this draft are you betting your life on? It's Keon Coleman easily.
Who are our top 3 in the NFL right now? AJ Brown, DK Metcalf.
Still DeAndre Hopkins.
I feel great about AJ. I think DK is probably, that's just what he looks like. It's just I would trust DK Metcalf to protect me from lions, bears, tigers. Whales. Yeah. It doesn't really matter.
Those aggressive blue whales.
Yeah, you just slap them, they turn around. Orcas.
But so that's the thing with Coleman. He has a skill set. My very favorite thing about him, he doesn't really separate. That's not the favorite thing. But here's the caveat to it. About 5 times a game, and it's all about, okay, what's the ceiling, right? Well, he's more athletic than you'd think. Can he learn to shorten his routes a little bit? Can he learn to get his steps right? Because he's not super explosive, but he's got a little bit in there. So if he learns to run good routes, he can be a little bit explosive. He can stack, be a vertical receiver, and he can create separation on some in-breakers, slants, comebacks, some of those things. Because when corners make contact with him, he has absolutely no time for it whatsoever. I'm trying to think of, like, since today is the day of analogies, like the most contemptuous. It's like, it is an old one. It's the Hulk and Loki, where it's like, did you just touch me? And he'll just, it's so funny, especially when they meet him right at when the stem of his route is ending, he's about to cut, and they try to put hands on him. He will just throw them backwards like 4 or 5 yards, and it's never not funny.
It's like a force push or something. Like, it really doesn't look quite, it looks like the corner is doing a bit.
It does, yeah. It looks like they're joking. It's like, whoa, yeah.
Yes.
And maybe that's what they pretend to do afterwards. I was trying to sell the call. No, dude. Like it really is what it looks like when, like, my 18-year-old, when he would play football with his little brothers, when they were like, 15 versus like 11. And that's what it looks like. There's a viable skill set there. The problem is the floor stuff. There's a lot of caveats you have to say in terms of, oh, well, if it goes this route, if it goes this way, you see it. And that's not generally what you want in a first-round pick, especially.
I was going to say I like his tape. I liked him through the lens of your review, while acknowledging that I would never be able to be the team that pulls the trigger on him in the first round. I don't know where he's going to end up going in the second, and I can't imagine the Chiefs ever making us revisit this conversation, because there's a ton about his game that is so fun. And by and large, I think fun is a good barometer for just like, what are we enjoying? But Nate, I know you gotta dip a little early today. Is there a realm in your view where you could see the Chiefs looking at Keon Coleman and saying, yeah, we'll break the mold for this guy, or frankly, at any of these receivers? We talked about Adonai Mitchell a lot. That's a really good player. If he and Xavier Worthy were both, hanging off the same cliff, and Brett Veach can only reach down and rescue one of them, I'm sorry, jump ball winner. We're looking for burners around here. That's my read on it.
That's the problem. Is like, the thing that I guess discourages me if I was a part of the evaluation process is, if you can't separate in college, it's really hard.
Yeah,
you better be amazing in other areas, where one of the things that, and Seth obviously showed it on the show a few weeks ago, but one of the things that even for his size, the Chiefs love the fact that Marquise Brown can separate.
Yep.
At all 3 levels. Rashee Rice can separate, I would say, at 2 levels, and you want to develop him to see if he can separate at a consistent level at that 3rd level, which is obviously very hard to do. I just want to remind people, as we edge closer to the draft, I say it every year, it's so hard to watch college tape, which is why obviously we trust Seth a ton, because I just remind myself, is anybody playing in the NFL in this safety group? Anybody? No. God, no. Nope. Oh, look at him. Insurance guy. 5th DB. Isn't that swell? Isn't that really swell? No wonder he's so wide open.
And we're still usually talking about Texas and LSU and Florida State.
And then
Yes.
you're looking.
Sky Moore's caught a lot of strays this offseason, and he got another one in this Seth piece. But like, it makes sense that Sky Moore got to the NFL level and was like, "Oh, I can't. My contact balance or whatever, me surviving a route through contact
hard.
was working it at that level. At this level, it is different because the dudes are different."
Yeah, I mean, you're looking, Cooper DeJean covering 2 guys at once. It's marvelous because what? He the only guy going pro next year on this defense, in this defensive secondary. It's crazy. You
Yeah.
look at what Trent McDuffie used to do, and you go, man, why can't everybody be like him? It's like, why can't everybody be like him? So it's tough. If you can't separate at a good level against average, Power 5 DBs, then yeah, it's only going to get harder in the NFL unless you have special traits. So one thing that the Chiefs loved about Sky Moore in particular was that he was a very good catcher of the football. You got to still separate to catch the football, or you got to improve as your career moves forward. That's always the toughest thing. But yeah, I don't know if they would go against the grain when it comes to Keon Coleman, but it would be a fascinating situation because as I've seen in the comments, well, if you say he played basketball, Seth, and you say he can do the basketball things, what about tight end? What about tight end? Can we get Tom Melvin's hands on him? Which is the
No, he'd need to gain like 40 pounds.
We can do that. We can feed him steaks all day. Did you hear that they're going to improve the cafeteria at one Arrowhead Drive? They're going to have 2 chefs, Seth. We can just have 1 chef dedicated to Keon Coleman and BJ Townsend. That's it. Guys, they said, hey, BJ, how much you eat, dog? Eat more. Can you still stay tall if you eat a lot?
You still say, I don't know. I look shorter than I was 15 years ago, but I'm not sure if that's
the absolute same. Yeah, it's
not sure if that's what happened.
But I don't.
funny.
I know people have said, "Hey, what about the basketball tight end? Man, that's like a 2-year transition." And Jody Fortson was special. Don't try to replace him already.
That's right. And also, hey, don't try to replace him in the first or the second round. Like, we all love Jody Fortson, but the cost. It's also, hey, you know what name we haven't mentioned yet?
Correct.
The Chiefs resident red zone threat, jump ball winner, high pointer, who's just waiting to get broken out of his cage. Justin Ross didn't do anything last year. But his hype train and his projection was all fine and good because it cost you nothing. He was an undrafted free agent. He got hurt, keep him on the roster, put him on the IR.
Right.
That's a great developmental plan. But none of the 3 of us were ever convinced that we were going to get real use out of Justin Ross from this team. If they draft Keon Coleman and the measurables are better and the health is better and all of that, I still don't know how they're going to use him. They're going to have Keon Coleman running screens.
And that's a bad way to use him. It's worth noting. And Nate was Nate was alluding to this. If you can't win a certain way, you got to be able to do other things at an elite level. So like Rashee Rice still has work to do learning to separate from man coverage, especially deep, but he learned to do it shallow with some physicality. He's got good bounce through contact, and he has, I'd say, elite acceleration. So there's certain routes, and he's also a monster after the catch. He's tough in terms of contested. So you got it, and he's really good against zone. You got to be able to do those things. We have no idea what Keon Coleman is against zone because let me tell you, the route tree he ran at FSU, I know as much after 4 games about his ability against zone as I knew before I watched those games.
His tree looked like a couple of the ones that I cut down with my little chainsaw.
I knew
It's
you
a
were
lot
gonna
of
say that. I knew you were going to say that. Hey, no, that's one of his good routes. Why are we cutting it down?
Not getting that one. It's going to the fence, man.
No, the other branch. You can't do the other branch.
Nate, before you get out of here, give the proper shout out to your head of confetti operations.
Yay!
And we'll let you go be a family man and for a very deserving woman who's gonna get an extra 30 minutes of Nate time today.
Yay! Yes, it is lovely Holly Taylor's birthday weekend extravaganza, whatever you want to call it, kids. But yeah, it's gonna be grand. She's an awesome woman. I got an update. Man, there's so many people to shout out in relation to my wife being born
The show's going to continue after Nate signs off here, but if this shout out list takes 15 full minutes, Seth and I do have at least. I mean, we haven't gotten off-season lessons yet. We have a couple other topics.
Don't you dare do it without me.
To.
Don't you dare do off-season lessons without me.
That's up to Seth.
Because I've been researching, guys. Don't wait for when. On a brief side note, he had one of the greatest, most recent album run-ups that I've ever seen. I was anticipating. I was in such an eager mood. The YouTube clips, the hype. He filmed in our city. It's one of the greatest album rollouts of all time. And then he did that. I noticed this supposed to be the step up to the fall off. Why are you falling off, baby?
You've been promoting this album for like
2 years,
like at least 2 years,
and like the YouTube videos, the beats. I mean, you the guy. What?
You said you might delete this one later, and then you kind of did like 48 hours after. Like, that's not. He said it's just Big Me, and you were like, I agree, actually. You were like, he said it's just Big Me, and you said he's got a point.
I love my wife, and thank God it's her birthday, so I could move off from this terrible topic. Because
Nate, the amount I held Renee hostage on a car ride to play her first-person shooter, and then like that, and then and then play it again so I could annotate it.
He was the best.
If she enjoyed it, I appreciate her trying. But I just need to talk about it.
He was the best. He's right. He ain't been out here. You've been out here.
Mm-hmm.
It's your time, baby.
Mm-hmm.
You got the juice. Why you ain't squeeze it? Happy birthday to my wife, who I am going to squeeze several times with love and hugs. And don't give me that look, Seth. I love you too.
Seth, they're married. Leave them alone.
And,
hey, whatever.
Yeah, she gets whatever she wants, which is me evacuating this episode in a rather not smooth manner. But shout out to Matthew Livingston. Shout out to all the people who received their confetti internationally. We've gotten some updates on that. She said it is time to go. So, fellas, I got to get these headphones off of me immediately. Shout out to the great women in our lives, or women in this case. But yeah, it's just, God, I'm really bad at this. Shout out to Max Hill, Chloe Hill. Salute. They had their kid. It's a baby boy. I know we mentioned that a long time ago, but I also wanted to give them a shout out too. This is mostly about Holly. Thank you, Miss Brisco. It's incredible. Jay, just drop the fall off, man. I hope everybody forget about this. That's the only play we got.
As possible. I'll remind everyone right now as you sign off, Nate, that Seth once texted me, is it Lamar Kendrick or Kendrick Lamar?
I don't even remember what you told me.
I definitely didn't tell you. I definitely never
I don't think
replied.
we told you. Yeah.
Wasn't he one of the people from the Super Bowl that I didn't recognize? The one where they had like Eminem and
Sadly, yes. We've lost him, guys. He's not coming back.
We never had him.
We never had him. Love you guys.
Happy birthday, Holly. Love you, Nate.
Right,
see you. We'll talk to you.
Man.
See you on Thursday. Seth, I'd love to tell you more about the greatest, most short-lived rap beef of this year and of a while. But I'd even rather tell you about what you can do on April 28th. Now, Seth, you in particular, you'd have a heck of a commute in front of you, and I understand that. But you can check this out right now on the KCSN socials on April 28th at the wonderful Holiday Distillery. We are having a spring tailgate party celebrating the end of the NFL draft that entire weekend. So that is Sunday, 1 p.m., April 28th at Holiday Distillery in Weston. You can get all the details there. You got to RSVP, though, through the KCSN pages. Again, it's up on the Twitter right now. You can scroll for it for a little bit. There's like a Google form to RSVP to make sure you get your spot. It's a spring tailgate, and you can celebrate some Chiefs football, celebrate KCSN, and hang out with us there April 28th. The other thing is that the KCSN draft guide is out, and it is spectacular.
Awesome.
That's also same places, and I think a lot of this info, Tucker, you can let me know if this is true or not in our little private chat, but I think a lot of this info will be in the description on the podcast and maybe in the description on the live video. Check your various KCSN outlets, and Tucker confirmed. So in the links in the video or in the podcast, wherever you're looking for it, you can get the draft guide there, an incredible value and an incredible resource. And really, I hate to say this because there's a chance that Kent will hear it, but just assume that I don't mean the parts that Kent was involved in.
Sure.
It is annually maybe the greatest individual Chiefs fan resource that is publicly available this way. It is really remarkable because it is all this work on all these prospects, specifically about how they fit with your favorite football team. And it's an amazing, rare thing. The quality only ever improves except for the parts that Kent does. So check that out as well. Again, Spring Tailgate, April 28th, and the draft guide available now. Seth, before we pay off the title of the YouTube video and get to our next thing there was a little bit of Chiefs news today. Frankly, I'm not sure if you saw exclusive rights free agents news. You did. Okay.
I did.
It's not big moves, but I think these players are both worth spending a minute on here today, where the Chiefs brought back on exclusive rights free agents deals Najee Johnson and Mike Caliendo. Najee Johnson was getting work at corner. The Chiefs even today in that tweet listed him at safety. He's a defensive back and do a lot. He played only special teams as a rookie, but in camp last year, he was getting worked in with the corner some. Spags had good things to say about him. Andy Reid had some things, but really Spags was truly bummed that injury hit him there, and he was getting work high in the rotation because of what he showed there. And as we talk about all the corners and the development the Chiefs have shown, we've mentioned Najee Johnson a few times. He's officially back, and Mike Caliendo, UDFA, who also started to climb the ranks a little bit. Nick Allegretti's in Washington now, and the Chiefs need to roster always a guy who can play across the interior and be a little super, super cheap depth. And Caliendo's that right now as well. Also, Joe Tooney getting up there in age. Trey Smith entering the last year of his deal. Nate's mentioned a couple times also that the Chiefs probably needed to add at guard at some point, and maybe you're preparing for life after Trey Smith. I don't think that that's necessarily what Caliendo is, but that Nick Allegretti level kind of depth would be a tremendous arc for him. So those are basically that's the news and my thoughts on why I care about Najee Johnson and Mike Caliendo today. Where do you fall on that?
Those are both great reasons to care. With Caliendo, it'll be interesting because there is something up for grabs there in terms of that rotational. Can you be that guy who can back up left guard and right guard? And one thing that made Allegretti kind of special is he could back up center as well. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can snap and then block. To be fair, neither could Creed Humphrey last year. So I love Creed Humphrey. I think he's maybe the best center in the game, but he could not snap down the stretch. It's like, dude, it's like whipping it at Mahomes' ankles and stuff. So I think that's definitely a reason to think about it. It means that they like him enough to keep him around because there's no reason they don't have to necessarily. Johnson is probably more interesting to everyone because he did seem like he was getting into that rotation. Fortunately for him, his injury was very early last year. And so if that was legitimate, because sometimes they rotate guys during training camp, but Spags had some stuff to say that was like, no, he was earning those reps, he was earning those snaps, and it was genuinely bummed, basically saying, no, he was competing with Jalen Watson and Josh Williams. That'll be interesting to see because Watson and Williams have kind of been in this battle for the third guy. I think Williams kind of gained an edge as the year closed out last year, as a lot more athletic, and they're both gigantic humans at corner. But both are competent players with potential to be considerably more. And so to see Johnson be able to push those guys, that means that hopefully, wouldn't it be great if their cornerback rotation would still go 4 deep with guys that they're very comfortable with? That's one of the things that made them so special last year. Not just the fact that the high level of McDuffie and Snead, which it is, your top end corners that matters a ton. They still have McDuffie, but not having anyone to pick on. There's nowhere where you can just say, well, we actually can go to our third wide receiver a lot this game because he's matched up against, this just complete dumpster fire of a player. There's really no weak spot there. And on defense, it's as important to avoid weaknesses as it is to have strengths.
I think it makes sense. That's our little package of intel, but I think that's the blip of news you may have missed today. Let's talk about the next thing here, Seth, and I want to get a little philosophical with it, if you don't mind, because we're on the same page right now with Mike Danna being back. Hollywood Brown's is on the team. They could use more help at edge. They could use more help at receiver. But right now, the biggest question on the top level of this roster is at left tackle, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, I could see
there's
it.
a good argument for second, but like right now, it's either a second-year guy who played a handful of games last year, Wanya Morris, or me. So that, I mean, there's not. It might literally be Chu Godric, who was an international player pathway player who spent the year with the roster exemption, everything. He could absolutely get in the rotation. But that's for that now. Prince Tega Winogo, still a free agent. All of that to say. What do you want the Chiefs to do with the left tackle spot? Because we've talked about Donovan Smith a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they go through the draft and there's not a left tackle drafted in the first 2 rounds, then I think Donovan Smith being back on this team makes sense. If there's not a tackle taken in the first round, it might make sense.
Yep.
If they don't get one of the premium tackles in this group, I think it might make sense. But they've tried different things for Patrick Mahomes. You have seen the Orlando Brown acquisition and attempt to make him the long-term guy, and then it doesn't work. You've seen them draft Lucas Niang as a third-rounder developmental guy who didn't fill into the spot. Wanya Morris is now in a much more active role there. But last year, it was a 1-year deal for a veteran who came in and had a pretty nice season. What should they be trying to do in terms of the guy that's theoretically protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side?
The problem they're going to consistently find themselves in is the one they've been in every year, in that you're picking at 32 or like maybe like 31, and it's just almost impossible to get a guy who's ready to start unless you get kind of lucky. And sometimes that happens. Now, this is a particularly good offensive tackle class, and so there's a chance, especially with how many teams might take receivers in the first round. Let's say like 8 receivers go in the first round or something crazy. Well, for every team that takes a receiver or a quarterback or defensive end, blah, 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 they're not taking a tackle. And so maybe one of the guys that you think of, I know we've talked about this a lot, but really most teams usually have like somewhere between 15 and 20 first round grades on guys. There's not usually 32 guys. Now I know it's like, wow, but every team says we got our guy every year. Weird, yes. And let me give you the same advice that I give to new defense attorneys. People lie. And so you're welcome for that scintillating advice. And so I would just say they could be in a position to have someone fall similar to like a Trent McDuffie thing, to where if it's a guy that they've got a first round grade on, a legitimate first round grade on, then I think it makes sense at tackle to go up and get him, given the monetary investments in the rest of the line and the really deep wide receiver group. And for the 3rd year in a row, grab a receiver in the second round. Xavier Legette is probably going to be available in the second round. Grab him. See if McConkey falls, or see if, there really are. I mean, there's a lot, see if Malik Washington's available in the 3rd, and then, go out and sign, Chark or Boyd or someone to kind of just keep things afloat. Because the thing about investing in a left tackle, it's the cheap, good play. One reason the Chiefs have been able to get away with certain things, like paying Joe Thuney the most guard money in the NFL, is because Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey cost $150. And you can do that. If you hit on a left tackle, suddenly at a position that everyone else has to spend $20 million or more to get really good play, you're spending peanuts. And so that allows you to spend a lot on right tackle, allows you to spend a lot on the guard, allows you to splurge on wide receiver. So I do think that's at least something to keep. This is a draft where you've got multiple tackles that could be a first-round guy, and you might want to treat it like a Trent McDuffie situation, to where if the guy you like falls, and normally I'm not really in favor at this point at trading up quite as much, especially in the first round because it costs something, but if it's someone you're really sure of, go for it. I don't think anyone, and it's really easy to trumpet the wins and ignore the losses because they traded up for Sky Moore, but they traded up for Rashee Rice. And sometimes, getting your guy, if you can make it work out 2/3 of the time, awesome. Or even half the time, because that's still a higher hit rate. And there's no way they regret Trent McDuffie, because it was a guy they saw as an elite player, fell to like 20, and they were like, well, crap, he's elite at a high-level position. Left tackle could be a similar thing. Or wide receiver, honestly. I'm just now finishing off the last snaps of Brian Thomas. Now, in a draft this deep, I don't know if you trade up necessarily, but that's with tackle if the situation calls for it. Otherwise, you bring back Donovan Smith. Clearly, no team has offered to break the bank on him. A lot of people asked about David Bakhtiari.
I think I'll save you the trouble. I think that makes the least sense out of
Yeah.
any option. Because
I
it is
feel
the
for him.
most he is the most likely option of any of these choices to have you starting Wanye Morris for 15 games. And if you're going to do that, do something that gives you an option to help out Wanye Morris.
Yep. And I agree. Now, there'll be physicals and that kind of stuff, but I mean, David Bakhtiari hasn't played even half the games, I think, in like 3 years. And I feel for him because, I mean, he is unbelievably good, and that must be crazy frustrating. But, you know, it is what it is. And, like, I agree. I think Donovan Smith, now, hey, if they sign Bakhtiari, I'll do a film review on the snaps that he did play last year, and I bet he was elite, and I'll be psyched. Well, if he's healthy and all that stuff. But I would not I would not be shocked to see the draft end, and if they don't have someone that they are able to go up and grab right away, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see them bring back Donovan Smith, probably given the point of the year that we're at, probably for cheaper than he was last year.
And so that's the thing. I mean, I think to try to put that in like a tidy, put a little bow on it in terms of the philosophical side, I think what you have laid out is a little bit of a take it as it comes approach to the left tackle position, which if you were starting or building a roster right now, I think would be a bad strategy.
Yes.
If you have the Chiefs roster right now, I kind of think it's the only strategy because you have invested in those other spots that you already laid out. You have seen them, investing both in terms of the financial and in the draft picks. I'd love for Patrick Mahomes to have the same guy protecting his backside for 10 years. That would be a wonderful thing to work out for. I also, and I didn't love the trade at the time, and I, in retrospect, don't love parts of it. I think it's all fine. The Orlando Brown trade was their best chance of making that happen because you were spending doubly on trying to get the extension done, of course, but you were spending to get a guy who had performed at a very high level, but still had some a room for his ceiling to rise in the way that every draft pick obviously does. And I understand searching for that. I think they found it in Creed Humphrey. At a lot of other spots, they found other ways of doing it. It wouldn't surprise me if Creed Humphrey is the only guy who Patrick Mahomes plays 10 years with on the offensive line. You know what I mean? At this point, it's almost like guaranteed to kind of head that direction. I guess unless they keep Trey Smith, which I just don't expect them to be able to do. So it's weird. It's weird to say that arguably the third or fourth most important position in the sport is the one that the Chiefs are going to have their answer for 22nd in terms of who's the starting player there.
Right.
But I think it's an honest way to arrive at that point. I think it makes sense for this roster.
It absolutely does. With the way the rest of the offensive line works, and Jawan Taylor's first year can't be called anything other than a failure. It would have been a colossal failure had he not pulled it together down the stretch. Still had a few penalties, but played better down the stretch, which is great to see. And so hopefully he's the guy that he was in 22, in 24 once he gets his head right, because that had to have sucked what happened to him. But when you've got Taylor that you do trust, you've got Trey Smith, you've got Creed Humphrey, you've got Joe Thuney, all you need from your left tackle in 2024 is don't be awful. Don't be unplayably bad. Because Donovan Smith wasn't that good last year. He was fine-ish, had some really tough games, but he was fine. Wasn't great as a run blocker, but he was overall fine. But because you had strengths elsewhere, you're going to be okay. And that's what Mahomes buys you. That's what having such a great interior buys you. This might be the last year they can get away with that. And so that's where you're not in panic territory yet. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do. I worry about the receiver group, and that's probably me placing too much on 2023, honestly. Like, I think people place too much on 2022 in terms of, they can do it with any receiver group. No, they can't. No. And now we've seen that. But now I'm like, oh, man, we need like 3 competent receivers, 4, 5 even, just like. And so I'm so relaxed about left tackle, and part of that is Mahomes, part of that is Reed, part of that is the rest of the offensive line. And so I think you can approach it that way, and might be one of the few teams in the league that can.
I think that's right. I also think we're over an hour, which means you're not going to get to off-season lessons today. Nate's wish lives on. Also, the two dogs have moved from coexisting peacefully for the first 45 minutes or so to briefly just sort of pawing at me around my feet to now They were fighting on this chair. Now they've run out into the living room. So I'm going to go see what's going on with the dogs. Is it dinner time? Not really. They'll figure it out. And Seth, since Nate's not here, I think it only falls to you to get us out of here.
You know, I got nothing, but I'm
Wow.
fine. I'll just say this.
Wow, you got nothing?
I am currently
You can make my chaps again?
Don't you threaten me with a good time, Brisco.
I have.
The thing I'm working on right now, I'll just prop that out there. I'm looking at Brian Thomas Jr. The review is going to be up on him. Add him to the list of receivers. I would be positively thrilled to be a Kansas City Chief, and that's like the 6th one in this draft class that we're not only would I be happy if they took him at 32, thrilled, or even they traded up a little bit because he's really good. And so this is the know your draft crush thing. There's so many good receivers in this draft class, and I keep trying to desperately think of an analogy because today has been a day of analogies. So this draft class is
What's it like?
you. So we're going to go with the simile because it's this draft class is as though you have driven into Kansas, as though you've driven into Kansas City and you've been living in Minnesota for years. And people say, hey, person, whoever you are, where are you going to get some barbecue? And you look around and you say, I could basically just throw a rock and eat at whatever place, the rock hits, and it'll be delicious. That's this draft class. It's basically a preference thing. Do you really want a Joe's style receiver? Do you want a Chef J style receiver?
I want the Chef J again. I want the Chef J style receiver.
Do you want...
Is that Marvin Harrison?
Yeah, probably. Do you want a Meat Mitch style receiver? I'd almost want that to be Keon Coleman because he's so big, but their loaded fries alone make them a first round pick. And so that's this draft class.
And if you'd to send free barbecue to Seth, you can tweet him at RealMNChiefsFan or contact him at mnchiefsfan.substack.com, where the Chief of the North newsletter is, where you can read the profile. Sorry, who's next again, Seth?
Brian Thomas Jr.
Where you can read the review of future Buffalo Bills wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. I knew the show was worse without Nate, but I didn't know we couldn't end it without Nate.
No, I can totally end it. You know what we haven't done, literally ever? If you like this show, do me a favor and go leave a review, because the people that don't like this show are super mean about it. But only if you like the show. If you don't like the show, instead, what you can do is open up a Word document and type all the terrible things you think about this show, right? Yeah. And then after you do that, you have it all in one place. You print it out onto a piece of paper, and I want you to fold it up really nice. Man, Tucker, I hope you saved me from doing something here. I hope so. Then what I want you to do is crumble it up and then print out 40 copies and then crumble them all together. And I want you to hold them up and I want you to turn them sideways.